You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? Very excited to share with you that I have Grant Smith Ellis as a guest tonight. He is one of 10 journalists in the courtroom at the Karen Read trial today. A very interesting day. Reminded me a whole lot of O.J. Simpson's defense. And we're going to talk about that. But Grant Smith Ellis has been covering this case, going to every single hearing, live tweeting it, really doing true crime coverage the way I think it should be done, with heavy emphasis on fact and including emotion and admitting and actually having a perspective. Not faking that you have no sort of faking that you have some kind of no bias. I really enjoy your coverage. Welcome, Grant Smith Ellis.
Oh, it's very good to be with you, Roberta. And yeah, I don't think gratuitous impartiality is a genuine fact-finding exercise. I think it's more of a money-making exercise for a lot of sort of outdated traditional media apparatuses that are way more into placating sponsors and their connections and things like that. This isn't the kind of trial that you can cover if you trade access for integrity. It's the kind of trial that you can cover if you are willing to actually approach human beings for what they are, not what you want or need them to be for your news purposes, which a lot of people have been doing, and it has really caused a lot of harm.
Yeah, I have a clip to look we can look at later that just Jesse Weber, just absolutely bizarre from Law and Crime. I've run into him a bunch of times in the courtroom, gunning for Karen Read on Dan Abrams' show. I was just absolutely bewildered, perplexed by it. I didn't know what, and I guess everybody's saying to each other, what trial are you watching? What trial are you watching? But just the fact that the Commonwealth is going to be taking twice the amount of time, if not more, than the defense, says something about the amount of evidence against Karen Read. So we started with, just sort of a playful opening on what was, I thought, which is your footage today, this morning, with the really PR bulldog for Karen Read, Aiden Turtle Boy Kearney, who was used by the Reed's team. Then they distanced themselves and said they have no connection at all to him. And now we see David Yannetti going into court, patting Turtle Boy on the behind. What do you think that tells you, or what do you think that's about? And were you surprised?
Well, I don't think what I'm about to say is gonna make sense unless we watch the full clip. So Roberta, I sent it. It's just on my Twitter, but I sent you the direct link in the chat as well. And I think if we watch this 2-minute clip of the walk into court, you will, and we can all sort of talk about it after. But because SA does come up, and then the other thing is recognize this is one of the first time actually Alan Jackson has ever engaged me during any of these press conferences over 8 months. So keep an eye on this interaction as we watch it. The dynamics are very interesting. Remember that I believe that Turtle Boy, and I know Turtle Boy said this on one of his shows, Turtle Boy was kicked out of Karen Read's inner circle for revealing Read's direct connections to Josh Levy, the current acting U.S. attorney for the District of Massachusetts. You can see Exhibit O of Karen Read's search warrant for affidavit from the seizure of her cell phones and to Karen Read and Aiden Kearney potentially violating 274.7 and 268.13b, which are both subsections of Massachusetts general law that you can look up if you want to. In any event, my point with that is that if we watch this video, and I'll tell you more about what happened at court later today, including me getting random hugs from multiple Karen Reed, not supporters, but people in the inner circle. But before we get there, I think we have to watch this video, or nothing that I will say after that will make sense. And just remember, folks, my day started at 4 a.m. I was number like 5 in the media line, even though I got there at 4 a.m. And then this was at 8:45 a.m. So I've already been waiting for 5 hours for court to start, and court hasn't even started when this interaction happens.
Okay, I know. No one can say that they're tired or worn out to you. You've been working harder than a lot of us. Okay.
Good morning, boss. The unwanted idiot.
Who's up first today? Gallagher? On the witnesses, Gallagher? Okay, excellent. We're going to find out why Michael Lank responded at 9 o'clock when the state police have taken over the investigation today. We'll see.
Do you speak to accused rapists this often? Is that a habit? Do you speak to accused rapists this often? Is that a habit, Mr. Jackson?
Yikes. Wow.
Hey, don't insult Lindsay's credibility, Mr. Jackson. We have an accused rapist here who's an idiot.
He's an accused child molester.
Your victim was a child, Mr. Kearney?
Sources are telling us. Where's he going? Where's he running? What's happening? Look at him.
Look at this accused rapist. Good morning, Miss O'Neill.
Oh, you smell great today.
You smell like weed, you moron.
Really cheeky.
You got this, Karen.
Sorry about that, bud.
Good morning.
You're welcome, ST.
Okay, so I mean,
Go
a
ahead.
lot of things happened in that clip. Roberta, I'm sure you enjoyed it.
Then what they've done in the past?
Well, let's say everything is relative. So if you're completely ineffective to the point where the jury is like, you are David Yannetti, you're a crazy man, and Alan Jackson, you're a bully, then any steps in a direction where the jury is willing to give you any credibility is a good sign. I don't think the jury, the reason why I don't think the defense is being effective right now is I don't think the jury is calling for who knows who and what was the investigation about. What the jury's calling for is bring us into the moment, the night of, tell us about what happened, what your client was doing, why all of this happened. Try to elicit it and bring us into the moment. Don't tell us why what happened afterwards isn't up to par, because in my view, the jury still doesn't understand why Karen Reed is innocent in the view of the defense. They never presented. So the jury's just like, listen, this woman's clearly guilty. So why is this defense team up here telling us about all of this stuff with the investigation? And then the other thing is, I think the defense started playing the sympathy card. I think they had in their back pocket the whole time, like, if this goes really bad, our best option is to just get the dogs off by, no pun intended, by just literally pulling out the sympathy card. Like, she has MS. The woman is clearly not well. She has multiple degenerative conditions. Like, you can tell the woman is not well. And I think the defense all along was like, if this goes bad, we're just going to go there. And they went there almost right away. It worked. The atmosphere now is literally everyone is just sad all the time. And we just keep getting hit with more things that are very sad. So it's changed the tenor of the trial. The defense's conspiracy theory about people framing Karen is never going to work, but they've at least elicited, I think the jury somewhat feels bad. I'm talking like 4 of the 16 jurors. I think 8 of them just hate Karen. And I think the other 8 of them are just like gobsmacked by what they've been involved in, or the other, however many of them are left, which is a smaller number. They're just kind of like, what, how did we get involved in this? This is just, you can see their jaws, especially, I'm not going to describe any of these people, but someone who sits in a certain position, and I can see this person quite often, they're multiple times just, and it's not even anyone else doing that. It's literally this juror trying to process, and it's not even when the testimony happens, but you can see the juror trying to process everything that is coming in back to back to back. And at a certain point, like it's like a perpetual, just kind of like just sitting there. And, you know, the rest of us are just kind of working away and going on with the testimony and listening to whatever. And you can tell jurors are just like, wait a minute. I haven't processed what you told me 10, 20 minutes ago. You're trying to tell me about, you know what, investigative reports and all this stuff. I saw that happen multiple times today, where the jurors were just so not awestruck, but gobsmacked, as I said, by what they were hearing, that it took them until we were 10 minutes into the next part of testimony to really realize what was going on. It was a lot, and it was quick, and it was multiple things, especially as we can talk about what Karen Reed's father did when he got a call from Karen, from Carrie Roberts' car at the scene after 6 a.m. that morning.
Yeah, I want to get to that. But before I do, this moment in court I thought was particularly interesting. Speaking of the defense and their credibility with the jury, during Lieutenant Gallagher's cross-examination, Jackson asks about whether he knows the height of John O'Keefe, and listen to how this exchange goes.
I don't know.
You don't even know that?
I don't know his size, no.
If I told you that he's over 6 feet tall, would you have any quarrel with that?
If Mr. Lally told me, I would take it as fact.
Fair enough. For purposes of my question, you don't want to take my word for it, but for purposes of this question, assuming that he's over 6 feet tall, there's a better than 6 foot margin for where he would be situated in the snow, correct?
I don't know.
You don't even know that?
I don't know his size.
Okay, so there we go. So
I forgot about that moment.
What was that like in the courtroom?
It is completely inappropriate to laugh in a courtroom unless every other human being is simultaneously and spontaneously laughing except for the judge. And that's exactly what happened in that moment. It wasn't even like a single juror laughed, or 2 jurors laughed, or 1 member of the press laughed. We all were laughing. And AJ was like, oh God, I let him do it again. AJ just keeps getting, he's like, this is my view. I think AJ is like, oh my God, this is not LA. And then AJ is like, oh my God, even regular people here are like incredibly witty and intelligent, which is true. I'm talking regular and like not Alan Jackson, like thinks he's the best of all time. Literally just regular everyday people going about their jobs, police, firefighter, first responders, whatever it may be. They're not just owning him, but they're owning him in a way that reflects a subtle and nuanced understanding of not only the legal process, but like this concept of a speaking trial that we talked about, which is literally unheard of, in my opinion, in American history, except for maybe the Scopes monkey trial, which had to do with teaching creationism science, I think somewhere in the Midwest. And I think it was argued between Clarence Darrow and Williams Jennings Bryan. Williams Jennings Bryan had like 14 careers through his life, by the way. Very interesting guy, kind of like William Howard Taft. But the point is, other than the Scopes monkey trial, I don't think I've ever seen a speaking trial like this. And what's so interesting is I read a description once about what it was like being in that courtroom when Clarence Darrow was arguing that case, which he lost.
So what do you mean? So what, wait. What do
sorry,
you
go
mean
ahead.
a speaking trial? What's a
Oh,
speaking trial?
Oh, yes. I'm so glad I get to explain this because there's literally only been 2 of them in American history, in my opinion, one being the one we're seeing right now. So it is kind of a novel concept. But Roberta, I think you're going to recognize it right away. And the speaking trial is, so there are concepts called speaking motions, speaking indictments. It's where you're writing an indictment or a motion, but really you're writing it for the public. Now, people may think about this art form and they may be doing it already without realizing it, because when you're commenting on social media, if you are talking to the person you're replying to, you're doing it wrong. Your audience, who you are talking to in your audience, although they are simultaneously reflected in a single communication, are 2 very different things. And so the art form of social media is speaking to someone else while communicating to an audience. This is a trial that, in my opinion, is designed to be presented to the jury by the state, but is really a speaking trial to unload on the defense and say to the public, here's what the defense has been keeping from you. Here's how you were manipulated. Here are the facts. And the reason why this trial feels like it ended so quickly is the defense was withholding a lot of material information, and a lot of people realized they got duped almost right away. The difference between the 2 sides here is that one side, the prosecutor, actually respects the judicial process and the rules of professional conduct and all of that, whereas the defense was just literally crapping on the floor and walking around in it and being like, let's see what happens. And this is how the justice system responded. It's going to make Karen Read for 2 months go to court every day, and her support's going to dwindle, and it's going to become very obvious. And the whole time the jury's going to be like, you're wasting our time. Why did you put us through this? This is completely gratuitous. And Karen, why would you put yourself through this? So there's, anyway, the Scopes monkey trial was an example of it because it was a very important issue that the 2 good lawyers happened to use to talk to the public about the issue. This trial is something different. It's the prosecution saying to Karen Read, what you did during the pretrial process was completely inappropriate. You manipulated your supporters. You subverted the federal justice system, even if the federal justice system was a witting participant because of Dustin Chow, the head of the Public Integrity Section, grudge against Michael Morrissey, unrelated to the Karen Read case. And fundamentally, Karen Read, you threatened the integrity of the American Republic. Therefore, you're going to have on national TV your soul bared before everyone. And in turn, people are going to realize, even your most ardent supporters, what you did. That's what a speaking trial is. And I think that we're seeing it. That's why it feels the way it does.
Interesting, because there's that moment this morning when they were talking, when they brought in those photographs from the firefighter and said she lied. That was the big talking point from the Free Karen readers about this firefighter, as if that somehow exonerates or would make any difference in this case at all. Or you could even make any kind of cohesive conspiracy theory, even if, say, they were best friends. Say she was best friends with, I'm forgetting her first name. Help me.
It's Caitlin, but Roberta, it's not about the substance
Caitlin,
of it.
right.
The point is we're talking about it. The jury never even saw it. The jury never saw those photographs.
Right.
They never heard AJ make that argument. It was outside the presence. It's literally just a PR thing. It's meant to give easily impressionable people fodder to talk about something so they don't pay attention to what actually came out today. And everyone falls for it because it's Alan Jackson or whoever's saying it, and they know that, which is part of the art form, and that's why it's so subversive.
Right. That's how I felt about it. Kitty's 1993 asks, what line of questioning concerned you the most today?
It was horrifying to hear about Karen having called Bill Reed from Carrie Roberts' car. So this is right after Karen's story has evolved 4 times. She went from, at the initial 4:58 a.m. call that she requested John's niece make to Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts, saying, oh, I last saw John at the waterfall. I had a stomach issue and had to go home. Then within an hour, as Karen eventually meets up with Carrie and Jen McCabe, Karen is saying, oh, I last saw John at Fairview Road. And then she's telling the EMTs, oh, I last saw John and I felt guilty because we had a fight. And then, of course, we haven't even gotten to the voicemail evidence of Karen calling John's phone at 12:45 a.m., 14 minutes after she's alleged to have hit him at 12:31 a.m. after sitting with John in the car between 12:24 and 12:31 a.m. on the morning of January 29, 2022. We haven't even got to that. But Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts are then bringing Karen back to the scene to look for John's body. Karen starts screaming before they even cross the tree line that she sees the body in a blizzard, probably because she had already gone back to Fairview to see it. In fact, I think her car data is going to confirm it before she even went and met up with Jen and Carrie. But the devastating part is John's body is only at the scene after the police are called and get there with the fire truck for 12 minutes. And after John's in the ambulance, he's down to 80 degrees, so they don't declare him dead. Because when you're hypothermic, we heard testimony that what happens is they wait to declare you deceased because your hypothermia can both contribute to death and also prolong life because your vital organs are more likely to keep functioning, and you can recover from cardiac arrest through like an injection of epinephrine in the bone marrow. Like your veins won't work, but you can recover sometimes. So they don't declare you dead until they try to warm you up. So John gets in the ambulance, taken to Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton. As John is on that trip, he's eventually declared dead at the hospital, unfortunately. Karen is in Carrie Roberts' car, freaking out, having just screamed at the scene that she hit John. It was her fault. She's screaming this to multiple different first responders. All of a sudden, she's in Carrie Roberts' car. John's being driven to the hospital in the ambulance, about to be pronounced dead. Karen calls her dad. And during that phone call, her dad hears her screaming that she's going to take her life. And as a result, her dad is so concerned about that as an immediate risk that he calls the Canton police himself. The very people, by the way, Bill Reed would go on to run a smear campaign against with Karen, in my opinion, and has them protect his daughter by going to section her. This is a Section 12 it's an involuntary commitment that you can do voluntarily to allow you to get out of the hospital quicker, which is what Karen ended up doing. But let's be clear. Bill Reed, I believe, called David Yannetti before Karen even got to the hospital. Why? Because what that moment and why this testimony was so big today, and I almost started crying in the courtroom. I held it together. Bill Reed, I think, realized when Karen was saying she was going to kill herself, that Karen did it, whether it was an accident or otherwise. And so he called David Yannetti. I mean, he called to protect Karen and get her sectioned, but then he called David Yannetti because he knew. And Bill Reed is the quarterback of this thing. Let me just explain a little bit about this. There is an unspoken understanding among people who have lived or at least been on the periphery of the American aristocracy. It is you act a certain way. There are manners. It's kind of like being a Boston Brahmin. Like there are just ways that you act. And that man is some part of the American aristocracy. He is like the type of person who could be literally dropped into like a high level diplomatic negotiation involving like prisoner swaps and spies and probably do just fine. That man today could not control the physical manifestations of his guilt. I don't know if he actually cried, but in that moment, you could see Bill Reed, I watched this happen to him, completely break down. He was shaking violently to the point where the jury noticed, and I'm not talking like literally like having a spasm. His body was uncontrollably tremoring because the stress and the emotion of him realizing that all of us knew that in that moment he knew when Karen called him from Carrie Roberts' car that she did it. It just all came out. And my God, he was bearing his soul. He'll never admit it. and he didn't say any words, but his body language was basically saying like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. I'm so sorry. I feel incredibly guilty about this. It was just pouring out of every orifice. I'm not talking one part of his body language that was subtle because I could miss the read. I'm talking about I could not possibly have missed this read because this man was physically shaking as his guilt was pouring out. There was not sadness about what he was hearing about that reliving that moment with Karen. No, it was he knew in that moment she did it, and he called to have her sectioned and then called a defense lawyer. That's what he was bearing his soul about, and the jury knew it too. The jury, when that testimony was coming out, which was a police officer, I think, talking. It was I think it was on cross, maybe direct. The jury was looking at Bill Reed. Not Karen, not the witness. The jury was listening, but they looked right over at Bill Reed. They know this family, and it's been like 5 days, and they looked right at him, and this was not a time for him to make that kind of screw up. You want to be in that courtroom, you want to actually play ball at that level and be involved in the tactics of a high-stakes legal case, you can't mess up like that. I looked over at him, and I was like, you can't. I immediately was just like, oh, yeah, no, you can't play at this level. Immediately. I mean, I think the jury took a little bit longer than me to get it, but I was like, oh, you screwed up, and they know too, and you just ruined your daughter's case. I mean, it was already screwed, but like in that moment, the jury was like, oh my God, this man knew. In that moment, he knew, and they were angry.
Interesting. And yeah, I was talking to my friend, and she felt that was the most devastating, or one of the most devastating moments of the trial today. And she said, oh, he knows she did it. He's very aware. And so much of this innocence campaign is really to avoid the shame on the family, which we see so many times. So many other cases. Rodney Reed comes to mind. Amanda Knox comes to mind. There's a lot of parallels in that case. So, I mean, it's not unusual, but very interesting moment that certainly you honed in much more on than I did, and my friend honed in on much more than I did. So Jill Downey wants to know, what did you think about, and this is the thing that really made me think of OJ today, the blood evidence in the brown bag, the supermarket bag. Did that seem like a gotcha moment for the defense?
No, and I will answer that question, but I'm going to take 30 seconds to just talk about shame and say that you nailed the pathology, which, is my favorite way to get inside the mind of these humans. The pathology of this is that people in the American aristocracy hate shame. I think I mentioned this before, but if you're one of these kind of people, Boston Brahmin, if you're a WASP or whatever the version of aristocrat you want to be, your name is supposed to appear in the paper twice. Once when you're born, once when you die. You get to be really rich, you get to do all this crazy stuff, but you do not get to be in public like that because it leads to shame. And like, if you think about the Gloria Vanderbilt of the world and these like exclusive like 400 lists and how the American aristocracy thinks of itself, shame is the worst possible punishment. Which means that also explains the pathology of why people were so happy I drove Turtle Boy away this morning, because Turtle Boy has the potential to really shame, and he already has Karen Reed. And that's a fate worse than being locked up to some degree. Being locked up has
hold on, before you continue, am I remembering correctly? Wasn't Karen Reed's mother just recently caught on tape in Tom CPU's video saying how much she loves Turtle Boy?
Yeah, but I think it's very similar to David Yannetti and Alan Jackson. Like, I think her parents were fans of Turtle Boy, and I think David Yannetti and Alan Jackson view Turtle Boy as tactically useful. But that does not mean in any sense of the term that any of them, including her parents, would be okay with him trying to like blackmail her or something. And I think that he has not been allowed into court. He's getting frustrated. And what does the turtle do when he gets frustrated? He does stupid things like try to, in my opinion, blackmail fucking very powerful, sorry for cussing, people. And the vibe I got today was he stepped over the line and he, like, his punishment is he's not going to be welcome back, and if he does come back, he's just going to keep getting humiliated. So that's what I think. I think that, like, nothing's black and white, as we've talked about before. These overlapping sort of human existences don't lend themselves well to simple explanations that, like, one thing is driving it. But I think on balance, the pathology of shame here is driving the Reeds distancing themselves from Turtle Boy. And it also reflects why the Reeds had to fight this so hard, because it wasn't about whether Karen did it or not. It's just the shame of the fact that she, that her actions resulted in this outcome. The Reed family name is over now, but, like, when they were making these decisions back in 2022, their thought was like, she can't have done this, or our entire family name is ruined. That's how I believe they were thinking about it.
Okay, let's go back to the blood bags, or the bags, the paper bags filled with the cups, filled with this, the blood. Did you think that the defense made any points on collection and basically procedure? Basically, I think really the question is any of these jurors going to say, maybe Karen Reed did it, but I can't trust this investigation?
Oh God, no. And I sent you a picture in the chat of the cups of the blood. What I think the jurors are coming to understand is, one, the Canton Police Department doesn't do homicide investigations. That's the first thing I think. And we haven't even heard from 1/8 of the witnesses that will testify about the complexity of a homicide investigation. The Canton police, that's how they preserve the blood. And just so folks understand, what the Canton police were doing is their kits could not swab frozen snow and blood. So their only option was, pursuant to the chain of custody, to put the frozen snow into a container, which they did not have any containers at the station to preserve that kind of thing. So they looked for a container, and then they put it in a bag that could close, which was a brown paper evidence bag that was a Stop and Shop bag. So that's how the initial evidence was collected, specifically because the Canton police do not do homicide investigations, because those are all under the original jurisdiction of the Mass State Police. But furthermore, where they have some tools to do forensic analysis, they could not swab a frozen sample. So my point is, no, it didn't hit for anything, because all the jury ended up thinking was, oh my God, this was a blizzard. The crime scene was rapidly deteriorating. The crime scene tape couldn't even stay up in the blizzard. The snow was rapidly falling over the very little evidence that they could quickly see, which was the blood splatter and then the cocktail glass. So they had to use a leaf blower to preserve the ability to collect that evidence. And then they're fighting against the elements because it's snowing so rapidly, based on what we've seen from all these dash cam videos from both sides, that they were quickly and rapidly preserving evidence in the context of what I think the jurors realized the police thought was a homicide, because the perpetrator was there screaming she did it. So yes, I think they let Karen Reed go to the hospital and they went about their investigation, but I don't think first of all, I don't think the jurors think that this was so far a problematic investigation. I think they think it was an ingenuitive investigation. And furthermore, more importantly, I don't think they think it has anything to do whatsoever with whether she did it. I think they're like, these people are heroes. They got to the scene. They got John's body in the ambulance. They got it to the hospital. They somehow knew all this information about what they could do to try to save him if his body temperature was low. And then they had this woman screaming at them that she did it. And then within like an hour, they're trying to collect the evidence and, piece everything together. That's how the jury is basically like, wow, how did they pull that off in terms of preserving the crime scene in a blizzard?
Yeah. It's and I didn't notice a softer Alan Jackson today. I thought he was going, as Karen Reed says, scorched earth on pretty much every witness, trying to say that they did their investigation sloppy, that they didn't follow protocol, that they were awful, and that that they didn't hear. One didn't hear. Karen Reed said she did it. Practically one of the only witnesses that we've seen who one of the few who didn't hear Karen Reed say, I hit him. So that was shocking. That was shocking for me.
Yeah, but that worked against him because what all the witnesses were saying was, listen, it was so windy that we were only getting snippets of this. And so it worked against Alan Jackson because he spent so much time today trying to say, Andy, why David Yannetti, why didn't other people come out of the neighborhood? No one came out, no neighbors, no people in the house. And the jury by the end was like, oh my God, like this wasn't just like a snowstorm. This was a blizzard where the crime scene tape was like flying around and no one could hear each other, even when they were close, unless they were really screaming right next to each other. That's how it came across. So even now, as to your initial question, it was a softer AJ. I know this man's affect. And I was within 15 feet of him. The jurors are closer, but no, today was a humbled Alan Jackson. And I heard some reports that he was reined in before going into today. And you could tell like he was self-deprecating, when the witnesses would own him, he'd be like, touche. He said touche at one point. He was like, he completely changed his whole affect. It was kind of like, all right, like, what's the word? He realized that like to succeed in Massachusetts, you can't be cocky. Like, yes, you can demonstrate your knowledge and flaunt it if you want, but you can't be cocky about it. You have to be humble. And he wasn't humble. Yes, it may not seem humble, but trust me, his body language and the way he was interacting in the courtroom, he was a much humbler Alan Jackson, and it worked finally. The jurors don't give him a lot of credibility. They don't write down a lot of what he's saying on cross, but at least they don't think he's a crazy man like David Yannetti, who was up there talking about dogs and if people were smelling each other in the police station. And oh my God, when David Yannetti asked a witness if he smelled the other witness, the jurors turned their head and looked at him like, what crazy. The hell is wrong with you, you crazy man? This is already the guy that they don't trust because he was the one talking about a dog out of nowhere in the opening. So and I saw some of the same looks in their eye when this man starts asking if one of the witnesses, a cop in the dispatch room, smelled another cop, a federal agent. All the jurors were like, what do you mean did he smell him? Oh, that was one of those moments.
Let's check out, before we get into sort of how it concluded, which I thought was very interesting voir dire at the end. Let's just check out some of the media that came out over the weekend on this case. This is from Dan Abrams' show on News Nation. Here's Jesse Weber, who works for Law and Crime, talking all the free Karen Reed talking points to a very skeptical Dan Abrams. Let's watch it together.
Jesse Weber, Law and Crime Network, criminal defense attorney Jonna Spilber, and Imran Ansari. So, Jesse, you've been following this case very closely. How has it been going so far, do you think, for the prosecution and for the defense?
I got to tell you, this is quite a case, okay? So I agree with you. The idea of they're going to show evidence. The only way he could have been killed is by the car. Statements, I hit him, this is my fault, really bad. You say a cover-up, my gosh, that seems so outlandish. Then you hear the defense. They say Brian Albert, whose house this was, trained EMT, never came outside to check on O'Keefe. When ambulances are there, never went outside. The lead investigator.
Wait, are you saying Jesse? I have run into Jesse Weber so many times in New York City courthouses. He better hope I don't run into him again, because next time I see him, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind for this. This is some nonsense right here. We say, why did they want to walk out at 6 a.m. after being up all night, having a Friday night of heavy drinking, and that they didn't want to get out in a nor'easter and check out their front lawn?
Forget about wanting to get out. He's into. I don't know who this man is. I could probably find out who his boss is and cause problems for him based on how manipulative he's being right now, but I won't do that yet because I'm a gentle soul and I'm a towel and we're friendly and fluffy. But let me be very clear. It's not that they didn't want to go out. It is that It was a blizzard that was so loud people couldn't hear each other outside trying to yell at each other. So these police vehicles and fire apparatus, because of how it works in these neighborhoods, I'm sure people have seen this before, when lights only, no sirens. And so there is no way. Forget about heard anything. There were no sirens. It was lights only. We saw this on the dash cam. There's no way they heard anything. Forget about a choice to get up. No one in the neighborhood heard anything or saw anything. And the body, after the police were called, was up from the scene, and John was on the way to the hospital within 12 minutes. No human being who has followed the case closely, unless they are doing PR spin for the defense, could get up there in good faith and say what that man just said. The only way you could do that is at baseline to have reckless disregard for the truth. And more likely, one is doing that because they intentionally are subverting cogent public discourse about a matter of the utmost importance, that being the factual record in the context of a murder case involving a deceased police officer. And that, are you telling me that man is a member of the bar in New York?
I believe so. I believe he is a lawyer.
You disgrace the profession of law, whoever you are. And I want you to know that not only do I not care,
I just
about
see
what you
him
do,
in the gallery. I mean, in the gallery, in the trials that I go to. So, okay. So check.
Sorry, I went on a rant there, Roberta.
All right. It's okay. I know it's amazing. It gets even more nuts. Check this out. And then he gets support for his crazy argument. And he's like, and then you hear the defense say, with absolutely no evidence, like just because they say it, that the Alberts, they didn't come out. Okay. All right. What else? Does that mean it's a conspiracy? It's a conspiracy. Even if they did wake up, all right, that would be a conspiracy.
In this case, who essentially is the Mark Furman of this case, never investigated, took her cell phone, texted his friends, I'm looking for nudes of her, was allegedly falsified a search warrant. I said to myself at the beginning of the case, yeah, I'm not really this idea of a whole cover-up. The more I listen to it, the more I say, I understand why people are outside that courthouse saying, free Karen Reed.
Falsified a search warrant in what context, though?
That the idea of the SUV, about when he searched and what he was searching for, and that SUV is the key component of the case. So if they're saying he falsified details in the search warrant about how to get access to that, that's problematic. And the idea that he wasn't supposed to have access to her cell phone and just started looking through her personnel files. And there's an investigation into that officer, and there's a federal probe.
Okay.
Donna Adelson is listening to this from jail, and her ears are pricking up. They took my cell phone falsely. Maybe I have a claim for my trial. I mean, what a freaking joke here. And
right,
none
he
of this.
He doesn't say that Karen Reed started the IA investigation. She was the one who referred it. He doesn't say that the federal probe was a favor to her. He doesn't explain how it didn't end in any charges. Like, this man clearly knows enough to spin. And I don't mind people who are willfully, who are just uninformed and trying to catch up and then are like, oh, I have a platform. Okay, I'll go talk about something. I loathe people who understand things and then spin. I hate them. I hate it because it shows a consciousness of guilt.
And they did this. It sounds good. So for those in the back who are still talking or thinking about an internal investigation into the detective in this case, that was started by Karen Reed. The FBI investigation also started as a favor to Karen Reed. So, and both came up, as far as we know, with nothing. So we would think that.
Well, hold on. The IA probe is still ongoing, but I'll tell you what it's going to find, because I've already reported on some of it, and it's going to come on the factual record because Yannetti already referenced it. During the campaign or harassment campaign or something that Karen was running against his family, the trooper called her a bad word. This is a word that Karen herself has used, and it will come out in the factual record that Karen used this word, and her supporters, especially the Glairer, have used it a lot. So we talked about this with the misandry angle or whatever, misogyny angle. That is, it's just not going to work. as soon as she associated herself with people who started using that word, she preemptively, without realizing it, subverted her own argument there. The other thing is, and I keep going back to this, the jury has already in their mind distinguished what happened between 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. on January 28, 2022 and January 29, 2022, and then everything after that. Literally, they didn't even laugh at the red Solo cups thing. They weren't even incredulous. They were just like, yeah, I mean, wow, that was ingenuitive. And that's something the defense thought they were going to hang their hat on. And the jury was like, no, that was smart. So you know what I mean? It's just not working.
Interesting. All right. So here, let's continue more. This is Jesse Weber from Law and Crime on News Nation, Dan Abrams' show, talking about the Karen Reed trial.
I think it makes for great true crime TV, this case, right? Because I think you had the podcast and all that. But when you take back and you look at the evidence and the statements from Karen Reed herself at that scene, I think that's going to clinch the prosecution's case. If they could get away from all this distraction and noise.
Because she said, I hit him, I hit him.
And she happens to have a broken tail light. Yes, there's a lot of other, I know, well, could it have happened elsewhere, blah, blah. Where was it found? But, it's pretty, unfortunately, coincidental for her. Right?
Well, the allegation is
that someone went and broke it?
That they planted the taillight evidence. And
but what does it mean planted? So they go and break?
How long that the law enforcement had access to her SUV is under question. Was it this amount of time or this amount of time? Would have been enough.
How many people would have to have been involved in the cover-up?
Wait, can we pause this for a second?
I mean, that's the problem. That's why I'm never a believer in the grand cover-ups.
Hold on.
I didn't mean to interrupt Dan Abrams' beautiful takedown, but just to be clear, we are going to see evidence that Karen Reed's taillight was cracked on camera at like 8 a.m. that morning. The person who was running one of the PR operations related to Karen Reed called this thing the stupid taillight project because clearly he was assigned to work on it. There is no dispute that her taillight was broken when she got back to John O'Keefe's house at like 12:45 or 1 a.m. that morning. The only reason that evidence isn't already out is because Karen Reed deleted 17 ring videos or her family between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. on John O'Keefe's ring system, which we know Karen Reed had access to according to testimony from John O'Keefe's niece in the pretrial documents. So Karen Reed knew that taillight was broken right away. And what's really interesting is Karen Reed faked that crash at 5 a.m. and she left only that video on the ring system. That was the 18th video, just her fake bump trying to look like she bumped up back into John's car. And what's really even more interesting about this, Roberta, is that she immediately, Karen, went and told Jen or Carrie Roberts, I backed into John's car and broke my taillight. So she knew it was broken early in the morning. There's evidence of it being broken. And here's what's more wild, Roberta. Did you know that on Karen's car, you have to push a button to manually override the brake assist if you're getting near an object or a person? So are you about to bring up Kevin's post? Oh, that being cops. Like who is this? This was some Antifa like undercover woman who got a law degree.
I don't know.
I think that.
But it's always the cops that they accuse.
But also, listen, if somebody walked.
Dan Abrams is like, I remember Dan Abrams from back in the day when he covered the Menendez case. He's like, look, I've heard so many. I've been here so long on so many of these. I've seen so many times they blame the cops. I think I'm at my limit of blame the cop, of a cop cover-up defense.
Out of my house after a party, dropped dead on my front lawn. I think I'm gonna notice. Like nobody noticed this party
came out of the house.
But see, at the end of the day, I think jurors don't like overly complicated cases. If they find that the prosecution laid out the evidence in a clean way, when the defense comes on with this big grandiose conspiracy theory, the jury may reject that because there are too many question marks for the defense's
Well,
case.
and that's the problem. The advantage that they have is reasonable doubt, right? It's like, again, if you're just asking, do you think she did it? Is there more evidence than not? That would probably be easier than proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
And I have to say, I mean, it sounds like I'm free Karen Reed. I'm just putting the point in. Every one of
sounds
like
like that. Sounds like it. Isn't that shocking? It sounds. Now he's backing away. Now when he's challenged. I'm just telling you because I've looked at both sides of this thing, and I've just been totally won over by the defense. Shockingly, I've been won over by the side that has a huge PR budget. Isn't that
right?
amazing?
I'll find out who this man knows. Why would you want to get my attention like this? You human being are not you, Roberta. You man who's barred in New York somehow are a moron.
Okay, it sounds like. Let's just hear the end of this. I mean, it just sounds like I'm free, Karen Reed, but really, let's hear the rest
of
of
evidence
this.
for the prosecution. Defense has a good explanation. I hit him.
Yeah.
How come none of those first responders told the hospital staff? How come they didn't put it in the reports? If it was such a big...
Oh, they did. Oh, we went over that. Oh, Jesse Weber, where were you on Alan Jackson's cross disaster? He did tell the staff. I love this. All these talking points. They didn't put up crime tape. We found out today they did put up crime tape. Remember, they didn't talk to anyone in the house. Oh, they did, except they didn't want to go in because they didn't want they didn't want to go in and have sort of conflicts of interest. So they strategically sent certain officers in to talk to the people in the house. They did this as close to perfectly as they can, being human beings who are fallible. This is ridiculous.
Well, credit to Dan Abrams for at least breaking the trend, but the two people on this panel who are doing PR for the defense are a walking testament. I'm literally getting upset about this. They are a walking testament to the adage that ignorance in a democracy is not tantamount to knowledge. No one should platform whoever the hell these two people are to talk about this case. They've not earned it. They don't know the facts. They're undermining public discussion about this case because whether they're gratuitously misinformed or intentionally spinning, they have no idea what they're talking about. They clearly haven't been watching. Forget about reading the pre-trial documents, which I think should be a predicate for anyone talking about this case, unless you're Sue O'Connell and your justification is you're so busy covering Trump that you want to take it in from the perspective of like a juror. Unless you have a really good journalistic reason, you should only be talking about this case if you know the facts and you know the law. Ideally both, but one or the other, and most definitely at least the facts. These two people, they may know the law. We didn't even get there, but they don't know the facts, and it's making me very angry. Dan Abrams, I understand you're trying to have perspectives on, but this gratuitous both sidesism that is not very healthy. You want to have someone on like, I don't know, Nick or Paul, maybe they spin, but at least they know the facts, right? And maybe they know the facts. Don't have people like this on. This is hurting this is hurting America. Like Jon Stewart said when he did that great Crossfire segment and talked to those two talking heads. You are hurting America by platforming these people. Stop doing this. Please, for the love of God, all of you, just put people on who know the facts. Forget their titles. Forget it. It's vacuous. It's gratuitous. It's irrelevant. Put people on who know the facts. There's enough of us out here. I promise you, there's at least 12, at least maybe 15.
Right.
Big deal. Somebody saying, I hit him. Oh, we know what happened to him. He was hit by a car. The fact that they didn't put that in, and there's been changing stories, and you're seeing this in this community. Some of the first responders have connections to these people. It just doesn't feel right. And I would have questions.
Look, I think from a juror perspective, what you're saying is very important, right? Because you came into this, as you said, thinking this is going to be kind of a slam dunk.
Right.
And now you're not thinking that way, which I think tells us a lot, maybe, about which way the jurors could go in this as well.
And jurors should kind of wait.
Hey, Grant, did you hear that? He came into maybe like, say, Alan Jackson or David Yanetti's office thinking it might be a slam dunk case for the Commonwealth. And somehow, he ended up on Dan Abrams' show.
Wait, yeah, sorry.
I'm
I was reading.
Speculating, of course. I'm just imagining what could have happened. Perhaps.
Oh, I thought he said that out loud, and I was like, well, at least he was honest about it.
No, he said he came into this thinking it was a slam dunk case, and then suddenly he's spitting out defense talking point after defense talking point, and talking points that really haven't even been addressed in this trial. I mean, are the cops on trial for not filling out forms correctly? I mean, is this the sort of, are we seeing the kind of office space TS reports, in office space, that they didn't fill them out correctly, and that because they didn't write all of this, they're all testifying to it. And
yeah, and
Kate from Mass Hall Troll Mafia made a great point that the reports themselves are often not admissible. So the testimony is the most important thing.
Yeah, and it's just more defense subverting the Overton window. But someone, I think it was Darcy, in your comments said, this happens in every case. Come on, Grant, you have a bias, and so do they. No. Okay, we can talk about this a little bit about In Cold Blood. I do not. My bias is towards the factual record and being intelligent. So if your accusation is that I am biased against ignorant people who don't know what they're talking about, then yes, I'm incredibly biased against you. In fact, I don't believe you should be able to talk in the public sphere unless you know what you're talking about. That's different than trying to learn about something, by the way. The learning process is Socratic by nature, and it involves asking questions to understand and then being wrong and all that. I can tell the difference. I can absolutely tell the difference when someone is trying to learn versus when someone feels entitled to be wrong and not do the work. So yeah, I know this is different. I have a bias towards doing the work. I don't care what side you end up on, but if you don't know the facts, forget about the miniature of it all, if that's how you say the French. I'm not French. I don't like speaking French. It's complicated. I speak Spanish. But if that's how you want to get stuff wrong, just small little details, but you know every other part of it, fine. Not everyone has a perfect memory. But if you don't know the basic facts and you feel entitled to an opinion, especially when it involves going after first responders and subverting the public discourse about this accused murderer because of PR, when you do that and you feel entitled to do it because of your, connections or your title or your friends on X network, oh no, I don't care. In my opinion, you have put yourself in the public sphere in a way that hurts America, and you are the problem. And yes, I'm biased against you. And no, I don't care what you think. And no, you'll never do anything to me or to stop me. So who cares? Just move on.
Well, this is something, I see it. I'm coming out from a little bit of a different perspective because I have seen so many of campaigns who use people who are, say, experts. So Jesse Weber, being on Law and Crime, being a lawyer himself, and having covered so many cases, is seen by the true crime observing public as an expert, and their opinion sways public opinion. So it's very important. They also like to use ex-FBI people. They also like to use profilers, body language experts, all sorts of different people, also different sorts of experts, psychologists, criminal psychologists, people who just label themselves criminologists or profilers, which is sort of a very, I would say, elastic definition. So they use those and I used to fall for it all the time, to sway public opinion and to really push out theories that are not sound and are not really based on any kind of evidence. And often I'm thinking about Steve Moore and Jim Clemente, two ex-FBI agents who went around the media with Amanda Knox when that case was going on and just lied their head off about the real facts of that case. So, and would only do soft interviews and in arenas where they wouldn't be challenged. Roziva, will Nightline interview be shown in court? Yes, it's coming in.
Only part of it.
All her statements yeah.
The whole Nightline thing
Her
is
statements.
coming into the whole clip. It's like 2 hours of stuff they recorded, didn't publish, whatever. That's all coming in. We're only going to see a certain segment of it in court, but yeah, it's all coming in. That was pre-trial. That's already coming in.
That's why I've been saying it's going to be her own statements that are going to bury her. Are you going to court tomorrow, Grant?
Oh yeah, I'll be there every day. We got to get there at like, I don't know, 4 a.m. to be able to get in. I swear, someone was saying if the public could get in, the tickets for this trial would be like outrageous. And what's fascinating is our line, the media line, is even like more tough to get in because before the trial started, you have to have been accredited press unrelated to the trial. Like you had to have actually been accredited by the court. So not only do you have to do you have to get in line, but like people who are like accredited reporters are getting there at like 4 a.m. Now here's the thing: the big networks can send placeholders, which is allowed. Then you got like the people like me. There's only me and one other network, and then the Globe and the Herald who actually go. We are the only people who are there for 12 hours every day because everyone else, like the anchors get to like, they will tell you, they would call it their beauty rest. Like they get to sleep until like 7. They come and then replace the line holder at 7:30. It's like the Supreme Court of the United States. Nobody actually waits in line. They just pay people to wait in line. But I can't do that. Canton Community TV can't do that. And then the Herald and the Globe can't do that. So it's me, Tim and Andrea from Canton Community TV, the guy from Flint from the Herald, who's a great guy. And I don't know the Globe writer's name because I have a long-standing beef with John Henry and his whole apparatus because they fired Dan Adams, who was a friend of mine, and I thought it was a very unjust situation involving cannabis reporting. Setting that aside, I don't know the Globe reporter's name. It's nothing personal. I just have a hostility towards that institution. They don't like to mention my reporting, despite the fact that I have friends there throughout their establishment. I don't like to mention their reporting. I call them a local regional newspaper sometimes. We have a long-standing feud. My point is, those are the 4 people who actually sit there. That's how hard it is to get in. So you can imagine how much interest there is in this trial. I'm sorry I went on a tangent there. Don't get me thinking about the Boston Globe. It just makes me angry.
Right. Do you, anytime you want to cut out, because I just have silly stuff. I just have fun stuff for the rest of the.
There's definitely something important we should talk about, which is, and I do want to stay for some silly stuff, but I hope what people take away is, one, we can talk about the voir dire, which was simple. There's this fight 22 years ago, and then one of the witnesses, I believe, it's Sergeant Lank, who's with the Canton Police Department, 22 years ago was involved in not an altercation, but I think it was one of the Alberts got beaten up. I think it was Chris Albert. Chris Albert was in a parking lot in the area or something, came up to Lank and was like, "Oh my God, I've been attacked." And then as Albert's talking to Lank, this is in 2002, by the way, the people who attacked Albert come up and start attacking him again. And Lank was there for this, told a bar owner to call the cops. The cops came in and all this stuff. Now, Lank ended up getting sued because during the arrest of one of the guys, like the guy got beat up. The suit didn't end up, it got settled, but it didn't end up with an admission of guilt. So this was a voir dire about whether Alan Jackson could introduce the fact that this federal suit had been filed against Lank by this guy who had been beating up one of the Alberts. However, what the judge quickly came to sort of understand, and we knew this going in pre-trial, was it's very unlikely that like the guys who were trying to beat up one of the Alberts and then Lank beat up one of them, they're probably not going to testify. But Lank can probably be asked about whether this incident 22 years ago has any bearing on whether he was showing favoritism to other Alberts, who, by the way, weren't even involved in Karen Reed screaming on the front lawn that she hit John. But setting that aside, it was more of an exercise in Alan Jackson trying to humiliate the witness, this kind of stuff that we've seen before, but it wasn't in front of the jury. We won't get a ruling on this voir dire until tomorrow, but here's what's really interesting. Lally, it was very subtle at the end, and you really had to pay attention. It's 7 hours in. Lally, during voir dire, you get to ask questions of the witness. And during Lally's voir dire of Lank from the Canton Police Department, he said, "Oh, by the way, didn't you arrest one of the Alberts for something like recently?" And Lank was like, "Yep." And Lally was like, "Oh, and who was your partner that night?" And Lally was like, "Oh, Sergeant Good, the other cop." So Lally puts Lank up there, and Lank's like, "Yeah, we've arrested one of these Albert family members recently. So like, we don't really favor them, and we're kind of been hostile with them." Jackson looked like an idiot.
Yeah, that wasn't. I saw that in your Twitter. If you want to support Grant, Smith Ellis, who's putting in the hard work of no line sitter for him, covering this trial. The links are in this video's description. Yeah, I saw that where they said, well, we arrested the Alberts. Well, that's not good for the protecting the Alberts conspiracy at all. I thought that was another, lucky that was not in front of the jury, but it seems like, at least the way I read it, was that the judge feels like she's got to bring in some of this. Otherwise, it could get maybe overturned in appeal, that the defense didn't get on to put on a proper defense. That's where I was going. I think some of it's coming in. It sounds like some of it's going to come in. Some of it. I don't know. Do you want to take a bet? You think none of it's coming in?
No, I don't think that one of those like brothers who attacked one of the Alberts will testify. I think what we'll get is questions about that the nature of that situation. I don't even know if the federal lawsuit will come in or the IA complaint that was not actually allowed because these guys were beating someone up apparently. What I think we'll get testimony about is, Sergeant Lang, by the way, this is not going to be till cross. So on direct, I think we'll get stuff from Lally along the lines of, like, have you arrested one of the Albert family members? I don't know if they can actually ask that, but something about like, would you call your relationship pleasant? They'll try to get the arrest in. If Jackson or DY, whoever does it on cross of Lank, starts saying, oh, are you biased towards the Alberts? And then Lank says no. Yeah, they'll push it, but that pretty much ends it. Like, if you're impeaching someone and they say no, like, I don't have a bias, that's the end of the inquiry. And that's what this will culminate in. But it opens the door if Lally doesn't get in the arrest of one of the Alberts by Lank and Good. If Jackson goes down that road on cross, then Lally gets up on redirect and will be like, oh, by the way, you mentioned on cross-examination that, you don't have any bias towards the Alberts and maybe had some hostility. Have you, had any reason to arrest one of the Albert family, something like that? So yeah, it's not going to go good for Jackson, but that's what that voir dire is leading to.
Before I go on to some of the clips, I have some clips of Alan Jackson when he ran for DA. I also want to talk about, I may save his DA strategy for tomorrow, but I do want to talk about statement analysis, which is not allowed in court. This is just sort of looking at Karen Reed's own statements as a means to determine guilt. And the way I like to look at statement analysis is to just look at it in terms of common sense, meaning that people say what they mean and reveal themselves in their speech. So here's someone who's really studied the forum. I just like to keep my ears open. So when Karen Reed's saying something like, John O'Keefe is the patron saint of Canton, and then the next minute she's saying he's frugal, which, how many women want a frugal boyfriend? I would think not many, but okay. So that, to me, that betrays a little bit of hostility towards John O'Keefe. Or when she says, did I unwittingly hit him, and did he pass out in his drunkenness? Did he pass out, meaning it's his fault, putting the blame on him? Okay, so this is from Sarah Adams, and this is her statement analysis. She said, I did not kill John O'Keefe. This is Karen Reed. I have never harmed a hair on that man's head. Karen doesn't contract her where one would expect her to, i.e., I didn't kill. She says, I did not kill. And that's something you see a lot, is they don't use contractions. They use a more formal, where she states, on this man's head, it is no longer personal to that person is being discussed. This is distancing language that is designed unconsciously to put distance in time and space between herself and the victim. Also, what came to my mind, and I'm not a statement analysis, but when she says a hair on his head and she's thinking about hitting him, obviously, one of the causes of death was the way that he hit his head. So she's thinking about that area of the body while she's talking about it. I thought that was interesting. You have anything
Well, it's
to
also
add,
a
Graham?
colloquialism. So, I mean, I'm not a statement analyst and I want to hear more of this, but it's a colloquialism. Like it's an idiom. It's a disembodied, dehumanized idiom. Like I wouldn't hurt a hair on his head. Like it's like saying I wouldn't harm a hair on his chinny chin chin from like Bugs Bunny. Like it's PR speak.
Or I wouldn't
It's
harm a
not
fly from
right.
I wouldn't harm a fly from Psycho. Boy, that's what I was going to say. Excuse me for interrupting. It's just interesting to me, and also we hear a lot when people are asked if they ended someone's life, they'll say, "I didn't hurt them." That's what I've seen time and time again. So no one's asking you whether you hurt his hair or you harmed a hair on his head. They're asking whether you ended his life, Karen. Question for Karen Reed. Why would the police officers want to cover this up? Karen responds with the following: because he's dead. I think it went too far. It was late. There was alcohol involved, and all family that is involved. The idea that whatever happened, things went too far originates with Karen. Karen herself is laying out an incantation that others were involved in something nefarious, meaning there's a family of people that are evil, not me. That's what I think Sarah's saying here.
Yeah, she's saying that she's describing what I call preemptive dialectical reasoning, which is this concept of what she called it. She called it like projecting it or something. What was the exact word she used? It was very well said.
Karen herself is laying out an incantation.
Incantation. Oh my God, that's such a good way of describing it. Because who's this analyst you're quoting?
Sarah Adams.
So what Sarah Adams is saying here is that she's making an allusion to a spell. I don't know this person who's writing this, but I understand what they're saying. She's making an allusion to Karen casting a spell. It's like an internal illusion. She's invoking the word incantation intentionally to say Karen's like hypnotizing people. And because it's a call and response, like there is a method to the madness here, you can literally define people's thoughts. Look at some of like the attorneys that cover this case, especially Melanie Little. Look at her YouTube videos. A lot of them have like a literal black and white circle. Like that's not just like a funny commentary on how this case can suck one in. That's literal subliminal programming. And that's what this Karen Reed, I know innocence fraud is in general, but that's what this Karen Reed PR team was all about. It was subliminal programming. And it's really messed up. Karen, I think my disdain for Karen is balanced somewhat by my like concern that she's going to die. But which is just a very human thing. I just can't, you can't not see it when you know it. Is how she took advantage of people. Like that's the one, like she knows she's going to get that question from me. We're going to be together for 8 weeks. And what people may not understand is I read all the pretrial documents. I know what's coming. I mean, there are bombshells I'm sure I don't know that are coming, but you think you've seen bombshells? Oh my God. Oh my God. Wait till week 2 is done. Week 3 is done. Oh my God. It is going to get so bad. She won't be able to put on a defense. She's not taking the stand, and she's going to get a question from me, and she's going to know it's coming because it's going to be when she has literally nothing left because her entire facade has been decimated. She's going to get the question, do you feel guilty for manipulating your supporters? And there's going to be no supporters around. And that's going to be my commentary, whether she answers or not. It's going to be like, look, Karen, none of them are left.
Interesting. Yeah, that'll be an interesting moment to look out for. Karen stated, I would call him the patron saint of Canton. Selfless, frugal. You would be hard-pressed to find anyone who didn't love John. Putting victim on a pedestal and admits herself it would be hard not to like him. She uses 2 unrelated words as though they were related. She uses the word selfless and directly afterwards called him frugal. The implication being that he did not spend a lot of money on her or on the two as a couple. Interesting.
She's starting to get the read wrong. So, okay. Your listeners probably will pick up on this. And I think Roberta, we've talked about this. She got the analyst got the read wrong there, because you have to understand Karen's pathology to understand what she does. Karen, going into these interviews, knows the factual record. She is building a story that aligns with information that she knows is going to come out. She knows her and John fought over her taking KF to Dunkin' Donuts, who is John's niece, who John adopted that morning, because John was saying that Karen was spoiling the kids. She calls him the patron saint of Canton because she knows no one in the world was ever going to say anything bad about John O'Keefe, and she cheated on him. And what's worse is Karen cheated on him for a very bad reason and lied about it. John hugged a woman in Aruba. We've already heard testimony about this. Karen immediately lied to John's own sister-in-law, Erin O'Keefe, who is Paul O'Keefe's wife, and said that John kissed that woman when he did not. And then Karen, to punish John because their relationship was ending, and just so people understand, do you want to say Karen was nice to that niece and nephew? Nonsense. She was telling John that like those kids were making their relationship difficult. She didn't like it. And as a result, John, forget about her cheating on John with Higgins. I think that was just punishment. They really fell apart, in my opinion, because Karen was basically saying, pick the kids or me. And John was like, are you kidding me? Like, they're my world. Like, get out of here, lady. And that's what I think really drove Karen crazy. And just to bring this all back together, she was calling him the patron saint of Canton because she knew she had cheated on him and done terrible things to him. That's why. So all of this, it's, yes, the analyst was a little bit right about some of the contractions and the subtle stuff, but the content, the substance of what Karen Reed's saying there, it all has a very specific purpose, and it's to take the factual record and envelop it in this kind of faux reality that is like an enchantment upon the people who want to believe it. Because if Karen Reed sets it up that way preemptively, then the bombshells that she knew, because again, she knows the factual record, she's known this the whole time, the bombshells when they come out are lessened. The problem is this thing got way out of control, and there are way more bombshells than the defense could ever contain, and the PR apparatus is dead. It is, I shouldn't say dead, it is on its last legs. Yes.
But
and Karen Reed
this was a PR campaign that was really trying to stop this from ever going to trial. And you can say what you want, but look at Yanetti's record. Dismiss. Go to his website. He gets a lot of cases dismissed. So, I mean, she may, it may, I mean, could you look at it another way that she could, that it echoes the record because that was their life, that was their life together also. She knows when she thinks of him, she thinks of what they fought about, and she seems like she cannot. She tries to, she thought she would make herself look good by saying he's the patron saint of Canton, but immediately after has to say something negative. Immediately. She can't help herself. She's still angry. It's like, and constantly blames him for the position she's in.
Right. I think it's so demonstrative of her pathology. Like someone was saying, these PR campaigns, the innocence fraud campaigns, take on the pathology of the people behind them. Oh, this is her 100%. But what I'm trying to get across to people, and people are wondering why, they're like getting mad at me on Twitter for not being vicious to this woman, like right now. And I don't think people understand, like, she knows it's over. Like, it would literally be punching down. And her own supporters have come up to me and whispered in my ear, like, she's cooked. Her own supporters have been like, Grant, if you like, you're so compassionate, you don't punch down. Literally, they've been hugging me. Like, they know it's over. I don't know I know you all. I know that it like looks on TV that it's still a fight. No. This is over. It ended a while ago, probably I knew it was over like 48 hours ago, maybe hours. I'm talking days of testimony. So back last when Thursday afternoon is when I really knew. And then Friday, I was like, oh my God, this is really over. And then today I was like, oh yeah, like they've accepted that it's over. They're already going, the Reed team, you all may not see it, but they're already going through the stages of stages of grief. And they're at acceptance at this point. And if anything, they're like worried about the fallout. And right now, immediately, I think they're, as I was saying earlier, I think they're worried about Turtle Boy trying to like hurt Karen, like through blackmail and stuff. So my immediate read of this whole situation is it got way out of control. The Karen Reed team knows it got way out of control. And now it's just a matter of off ramping it and just praying that like this damage does not get worse. It could get the criminal liability for her family, the civil liability, oh my God, this is going to get so bad. And this is just the beginning, this criminal trial.
Interesting. You can see it on her face. A lot of people are commenting on her face and the breaks. She looked like she was fighting with her legal team at one point in the early stage of today. She looks unhappy. And if I never understood how people could read the jury's faces, I always thought, well, some of them have to have poker faces, but you really can when you're in the court. At least not so much, especially the Nexium trial, Keith Raniere's trial. I mean, at the end of that, it just looked like the jury was looking at something that smelled bad every time the defense came up. It was so obvious which way it was going to go. It was not even. It's not as hard to read the jury as you think. Be curious to see if you're right or wrong, because it's a fool's game predicting a jury. You never know which way it's going to.
Well, especially with
we've had freak and inconsistent verdicts before. Excuse me.
Well, no, you only need one holdout, so it's anyone's guess. But yeah, I don't know if anyone. I guess it's so hard to explain this. It's not actually, because I've been doing it for a few days with the help of your show. But they're not playing poker. The jurors are not sitting there trying to hide anything. I get you can't see it on TVs, and there's no one in the courtroom except for the parties, and people aren't talking, especially the Reed side, for good reason, and the family's never going to talk. So you're only getting like what some of the reporters are getting. But yeah, like some of these reporters don't know the facts well enough to gauge like what's going on. Forget about read the jury. I know everything that's coming outside of the bombshells that the witnesses just kind of say. So all I need to really do is read the aura of the jury, which, I mean, I can read energy in a room just passively sitting there. But when I'm actually focusing on like reading these human beings, they're not, I mean, forget about like, they're not actually trying to hide anything. They're just sitting there reacting as if you were like listening to someone tell you a story. They routinely go, or they're just like, what? Or like one time I told you, David Yannetti twice has gotten a look from like 6 of them simultaneously. Like, you are a crazy man. Why did you just ask the witness if they smelled someone? They're not hiding it. And yes, in context, I get why David Yannetti was asking this witness if he smelled the guy, because he wanted to know if he smelled like booze. But the jury doesn't know that. And the jury didn't hear that. They just heard, what? Did you smell the guy? And they were like, what are you talking about? So yeah, it's an art. And I don't, it's interesting. I think the defense in some sense has to rely on my tweets in some sense, because Elizabeth Little and AJ and DY cannot simultaneously conduct this trial and watch the jury. Now, yes, they're getting feedback from the reads, but they can't film them. And the tech guy doesn't know what the fuck. He's just like, how the hell did I get involved in this goddamn thing? So there's very few people who can actually read that jury in real time. Like DY is doing it when he can look at them. AJ is doing it when he can look at them. That's how they're adapting. But outside of me, I don't think they have anyone who can analyze the jury. Like they could ask Ted Daniel, but like Ted's going to be like, yeah, I'm a little bit in over my head here, and they, what I mean? Like they're not going to be able to figure it out. And I'm telling them I'm not holding anything back or trying to push something. I'm telling you how the jury's reacting, whether they want to believe it. And the thing is, the defense is in the room. So they know that I'm being accurate to it. I just think once they're actually reading it back, they're like, oh God, it's way worse than we thought.
Yeah, let me just go through. Karen stated most days he went to work and I'd stay with his niece and nephew. All the breaks that the kids had, we did something with the kids. And Ms. Adams says she's painting herself, meaning Karen Reed is painting herself as the more responsible one, trying to garner sympathy for her taking one for the team. And we know now what came out is that she told I believe it was the staff at the hospital, that she didn't want the kids and she couldn't raise them, even though she was referring to John as her husband. Number 5, Karen stated we had an argument on New Year's Eve and he became incoherently drunk. I ended up bringing in the new year with his niece and nephew while I didn't get back to our room until 3 a.m. So that was rough. I felt pretty much taken advantage of. Admits to an argument, but takes no role or responsibility for this part.
And but it's worse. She's lying. John hugged a woman who, by the way, this woman was either the sister or the widow of John's former BPD partner. John was the godfather to the woman's child. And John hugged her. Karen, in the hallway in front of the niece and nephew, near the elevator in Aruba, starts screaming. She said the F word at the woman. Karen did. Then John and Karen go up to the bedroom in the hotel, where they were staying, and in front of the niece and nephew, Karen is screaming at John. It wasn't that John went out late at night. Karen was preemptively trying to make it look like the Aruba incident was about John when it was really about her. She was the one, and it wasn't the Aruba incident. That was just like the straw that broke the camel's back, I'm sure, that led her to retaliate against John. They were falling apart because Karen thought the kids were in the way of their relationship. And Karen on the way out was like, oh, you're going to leave me? Fine, I'll cheat on you. And by the way, and what's really messed up is I think when it really came down to it, she was like, no, you're not going to leave me. Like, if I can't have you, no one can.
Yeah, definitely. That happens a lot. It's the ultimate control. It's the ultimate victory. I have the power. I have the control. I decide who lives. So she admits to the argument, and it's always, you notice, this is something I'm observing. It's always John's drinking, not her own, that's the trouble. And she's a martyr for putting up with it. Admits to an argument, but takes no role or responsibility for her part. She's disparaging the victim by implying he was an out-of-control drunk, that he couldn't take care of the children, that Karen had to do it, and that Karen, per her claims, helped get John to bed at 3 a.m. Ironic that her BAC on the night of John's death was thought to be around 0.29, far over the legal limit. And I may save the rest of this. Oh, no, I think we'll finish this out. Both times I met Brian Albert, he seemed like the type of guy that you'd be surprised he's out socially, because he doesn't ever seem like he wants to be there. The sentence on its face doesn't flow coherently. She's trying to overpack the sentence with unnecessary details. What do any of these remarks have to do or reflect on Karen Reed's BX that night? So I pull at the front of the driveway. It's snowing. John has no coat on. It's cold and windy. I drop him off. He goes up the driveway and approaches the side door. As he approached the door, I started looking down at my phone. Her tense is off throughout this statement. She's speaking in the present active first person, as though these events she's detailing are unfolding in that moment versus in the past. When it actually did happen, it should say, I pull up to the driveway. It was snowing. I pulled up to the driveway. It was snowing. I dropped him off. He went up to the driveway and approached the side door. As he approached the door, I started looking at my phone. Huge warning signs for deception, tense changes that render the statements incorrect. Karen was overheard by multiple witnesses. In addition to the fire personnel, that overheard Karen say, "Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?" Karen states that it is not possible for her to have struck John. She doesn't explain what that means, nor how it could be out of the realm of possibilities. Is it possible she accidentally struck him while out driving drunk? Considerations: how much did John drink that night versus Karen? Voicemails left for John that night telling him that she hated him were left, and multiple times after allegedly dropping him off, quote unquote. It's Karen's idea the next morning to return to the scene of the crime where she finds John. Karen continues to be dishonest, even about her own alcoholic consumption that night. She's seen on video purchasing 9 different drinks, but takes accountability for 4. Karen wanted to date John, but not have the attached responsibility that she didn't want nor ask for in taking care of his niece and nephew. And I think she liked also that it added to her kind of social mass to be taking care of these kids. A hostility, John's children, his niece and nephew. Who else, if anyone outside of Karen Reed, was feuding recently or a long time coming with John O'Keefe? One person, Karen Reed. I've just been reading the statement analysis of Sarah Adams from Karen Reed's own statements. Kind of interesting. Thank you, Sarah, for sending that in. I appreciate it.
Oh, they were Sarah Adams was definitely in the chat, so we should say hello.
Hey, Sarah, thanks for stopping by. But yeah, and I just wanted to look at also before I know we've been going for a long time, but quickly look at Alan Jackson. He ran for DA this is way back 2012, I believe. And this is his own ad campaign, and this is the way he presented himself.
I'm Alan Jackson, and this is my office. For 17 years, I've made sure violent criminals who sit here get the justice they deserve. I'm modernizing the DA's office and working to keep kids out of crime in the first place. Now, Jackie Lacey's a good person, but she hasn't tried a case in 13 years. She's a political appointee who was dishonest under oath.
So already it's the same way he's trying this case, with personal attacks. This is his ad. It should be all the good things he's done. And it's already, I'm not this other horrible person. I mean, she's not a horrible person, but hasn't tried a case in 13 years and is dishonest, but not me. So just choose the dishonest one.
To protect
the non-dishonest one, excuse me, the honest one, me, Alan Jackson, the guy standing in front of you in this cringy commercial.
Boss. I think we need a DA who knows how to protect families, not politicians.
Ooh, and there's that very hook. He's got a hook. He's going to protect families, not politicians. Thanks, Alan Jackson. But then he came back with this one. Are you ready? You ready for another one? I love these.
Every case is different, but there's always a victim and a family.
There's always a victim and a family, but you might be very confused now that I've become a defense attorney, because now the accused murderess is now the victim. And we're going to totally obscure the victim and their family altogether when we're not harassing them and intimidating them and accusing them of horrible crimes. There's always them. There's always them when you have a client to accuse of horrible crimes, harass, make their pain, just amplify their pain. Interesting. It also said in this article that he really went after, his campaign ads got increasingly more aggressive, and not unusual in any kind of campaign, but his got increasingly more personal, and that he was a registered Republican. I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't have suspected that.
And they all deserve justice. I'm Alan Jackson, and as a gang prosecutor, I've put dozens of violent criminals behind bars. And I'm modernizing the DA's office with innovative ways to fight crime. But we need to do more.
See, he's modernizing the office with a lot of computers and a lot of blue light. He's modernizing it. Before, everybody was writing on tablets But now they got blue lights. We got computers. We're going digital. We're going to bring in this thing called the internet. It's going to be amazing. We're going to update everything. Because before, all we had was a number 2 pencil and a yellow leaf tablet before I became DA. That's going to be his claim to fame. You have anything to add, Grant?
Well, no, just that he was much younger here and he wasn't as developed in his style, but you can see that okay, so if you listen to what I talk about on the stream, you will hear a very benevolent, very gentle, very respectful explanation of the human psyche and why it's important not to manipulate it for like political purposes or for profit or for any number of terrible reasons, because it's a very delicate thing and you're talking about autonomy on a mass scale and it's very easy to manipulate. Alan Jackson, back in 2014, was learning this art form clearly, and he's now taken it, as you mentioned, into a different sort of arena with his defense work. But make no mistake, the form, as you rightly pointed out, has stayed the same, right? And it's propaganda. And we talk about propaganda like it's this inert thing. No, it's extremely insidious. And it moves so gradually as to make its overarching effects feel less deleterious than they actually are. But my God, it is a fundamental attack on the human psyche. And the reason why you feel so alienated from yourself, all of you, is you've grown up in a culture that thrives on alienating you from yourself to drive your purchasing decisions and also like your participation in these faux innocence campaigns. Not all of you fall victim to it, but if you think about it, there is not one decision that you've probably made that hasn't been influenced. I could literally influence you right now if I wanted to. I just happen to be benevolent and don't use these powers for evil. Most people don't, unfortunately, choose to go towards the path of the light. I don't know why. I think it's just because people feel like they need to feed their families or whatever. But this is a gift. Like, you shouldn't codify it into words and study it and then make it into this analytical framework that can be used against people. It's a sacred thing. And yes, we're talking about a DA race in California, but we're really talking about something bigger, which is manipulating the polity for nefarious ends and oftentimes very dangerous ends. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he left when he lost. He went to work for, I'm going to read that in a second. He went to work for a law firm that funded his campaign as a defense attorney. So it's kind of interesting.
To stop crime before it starts.
So someone has to tell Alan Jackson to stop hanging out on the children's playground. It's a little creepy, a little maybe too close to the kids playing here, playing basketball. Not maybe the right look you want for your commercial here, Alan.
After school programs, community outreach, and parenting programs. I'm running for district attorney because every child should have a chance.
Oh, every child should have a chance, especially they should have a chance to play basketball free from me making commercials nearby. Hold on one second. I just want to share this because I thought this article from, I think it's the LA Times, was super, super, super interesting. Hold on one hot minute. This was after he lost. So I'm halfway down the page, but okay. Alan Jackson, it's the LA Times, whose bid for DA's job failed to leave office. So he kind of this is in February 2013. So he was running in 2000, he lost in 2012 in November. Alan Jackson, a veteran Los Angeles County prosecutor whose bid to become district attorney ended in defeat in November, is leaving the district attorney's office to join a private downtown firm that practices civil law. So interesting. Jackson said his last day in office he sought to lead will be February 15th. He will pursue a career as a civil litigator. So with Palmer, Lombardi, and Donahue, whose 3 partners were political supporters of his election campaign. So for those of you who don't know, what we're watching now is a criminal trial, a civil trial. Good example of that is the Depp versus Heard trial. The only thing in a civil trial on the line is money, who's going to pay. Here, people's freedoms, right, are in the balance. While often there can be also restitution added, and often is in these criminal trials, but that's not really the issue at stake. It's usually, it's the punishment. It's usually a loss of freedom is at stake, some kind of loss of freedom, or some kind of paying it back. All the different possible sentences, doing community service, home arrest, prison time, those kind of things. The move comes a month after District Attorney Jackie Lacey, who beat him in the November runoff, reassigned Jackson from the prestigious Major Crimes Division to a post where he's no longer in court, but instead supervises prosecutors handling less high-profile cases. Jackson previously described his reassignment as a backward step for his career. My understanding is that you can't do that. You can't take vengeance on people who, as a DA, and remove them from a high profile to a job that's much. So instead of fighting that, he just left and went to the supporters that.
What you really can't do is
Right.
work for a DA and run against them and so of course he left, because if you lose, they're going to reassign you. Like, what they can't do is fire you, but you're going to like scrub floors, like rhetorically or whatever it may be, metaphorically.
Right. But you can't, there's a huge lawsuit going. George Gascon has done that more than any DA. Anybody who's spoken out against him has been reassigned.
Oh yeah, but if this,
there's a big, massive lawsuit.
Sure, but if this LA district attorney did this to someone like Alan Jackson, even back then, it was because it was a fait accompli. Like, no, you're not going to sue me, Alan Jackson. You're going to leave. It was you think hypothetically, you think blackmail is intense in the context of the stuff we've covered in this case? Oh my dear God. I can only imagine what it is like at those levels. There is not a person in any position of political influence anywhere that doesn't have someone who's like, don't you dare step out of line or this is coming out. Oh yeah, that's what do people think? I get people live in this like, oh well, I gotta go about my day, but no, the world at that level, everything is decided ahead of time. There's no way she would have risked whoever that district attorney is a lawsuit. It was like, I'm going to do this, and there's nothing you can do about it other than leave. Like, it's pre-decided.
Right. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Jackson, a deputy district attorney for 18 years, said the decision to leave was a difficult one. He said he plans to continue to play a role in the criminal justice system. But isn't it interesting? He went from being a civil lawyer to being a civil defense attorney to a criminal defense attorney. And, look at the people he's represented: Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein. Jackson was one of two prosecutors who won the conviction of famed music producer Phil Spector in 2009, marking the office's first victory in a celebrity murder trial in more than 40 years. He also won a conviction in the cold case murder of motor racing legend Mickey Thompson and his wife. In 2010, the county's Bar Association named him Prosecutor of the Year. Lacey, a registered Democrat who had the backing of incumbent Steve Cooley, beat Jackson, a registered Republican, in a runoff 55-45. So it was a competitive.
Oh, yeah, but hold on. If we go out, there's something telling. Yeah. No, it was competitive, but there are two telling things. One, it's a nonpartisan race, but she's a Democrat, he's a Republican, so that was wrong of him. And then, you'd never do that. And then the other thing is, look at that quote. Lacey's spokeswoman, Jean Gusson, I don't know how to pronounce that name, thanked Jackson for his excellent trial work and wished him well. Okay, so if you're involved in that world at all of statements, or especially dealing with government communications departments, that you can read a lot from what's not said, right? So I can tell you, probably, I don't know these people, and if I knew them, I could definitely tell you what the meeting was like. But I could tell you a little bit about what that meeting was probably like. Lacey, the DA, was probably like, all right, Jackson's going to blow off some steam, and it's going to be in the LA Times. So like, he's probably not going to go too hard because like we got this stuff on him. So just let him blow off a little steam. They're going to come to us for a quote. So like, what should we say? Oh, well, if he's going to be blowing off steam, we can't really dig at him, and we already won, and we're forcing him out. So just like thank him. And then someone was like, yeah, but what if he like smears us in the article? Then it's going to look like we're like thanking him for like, and we're admitting to it. And then the only reason they would have run that quote is because the DA, and of course I already predicted this based on my read of what happened earlier in the article, the DA was like, no, he won't say anything stupid because he values his reputation and he doesn't want his life to be over, metaphorically. So I can just tell you how this played out. I have no idea what the hell these two fought about or what this woman has on Alan Jackson, but she has something.
The nonpartisan campaign grew testy at times, with Jackson running a television commercial in which he referred to her conflicting testimony Lacey gave at an employee grievance hearing and accused her of being dishonest under oath to protect her boss. Remember, we just saw that?
Yeah, sure. But if you have something you're dangling out there in public and like, yeah, it's okay. But like, no. If he had something that was like as good as what she had on him, this is just my read of it, she would have dropped out of the race. No. She got, I don't know what she got on him, but because as you were saying, Roberta, no DA in their right mind would retaliate against their political opponent unless they knew it wasn't going to result in a lawsuit. That's my read of it.
I gave my best effort, and it's time to look in a different direction, but I don't close any doors. He said it was an amazing honor to run for DA. So that's a quote.
Notice nothing about her.
Jackson.
No, thank you. You know what I mean? He was using that as a negotiated springboard to continue his career, and the DA was okay with it. Like that was that whole piece was negotiated, in my opinion.
Right. And then one more. Here's just another last one for today, because I just love these. So he's using he's using, instead of Warner Brothers, he's using We the People. So he's using common brands or common things we see every day to kind of brand himself out. So I guess they had to beat Carmen Trutanich, who got $1 million bail for someone who put up a really loud sign. I forget what they called it, like a flashing electronic sign on a side of a building, and you can hear Alan Jackson making great fodder of this and this.
City Attorney Carmen Trutanich announced.
So how you wouldn't even know that this is about Jackson? It's like, again, it's the politics of personal destruction, that he's engaging in. It's the same way he tries people. He talks to witnesses, just destroy them, go scorched earth. I mean, don't perfect your argument. Just destroy the other side. Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing from the defense here. Nothing, didn't work on that conspiracy. I don't even think, I would love to ask the Free Karen Reed people, what exactly is the conspiracy? Just tell me the story from beginning to end. Tell me how it worked from beginning to end. And I don't think they could. I think it would change from person to person.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think that's the point of it. I think this commercial that we're seeing here is the perfect example. First, you can tell someone, okay, so I don't think this is like a neurotypical versus like whatever the non-neurotypical word, whatever the two things are. I don't think this is that. Like, I think this, just going back to the music, people, I need to make a foundation here. This music is so bad and so offbeat and so not aligned to what this is trying to accomplish. And the presentation of the quotes and the font and the vibe of it is so artificial. It just screams like, I am inauthentic. It just drips with it. And so I say that's like a neurotypical way of approaching something because it just has no vibe to it at all. But
what is this monkey doing under the bed?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not even like this. So if you look at really high level political campaigns, they're not authentic, but at least they can make up for it with what's the word, panache, or like money. This is not good. So not only is it inauthentic, it's bad, and that's kind of what I want to drive at here. This personality, this person, Alan Jackson, is just this vacuous suit. There is intelligence there in an applied form, in like I can move money around and make people do things kind of way, but there's no substance to this man. Like, look, that's the music he picked. Like, he couldn't relate to human beings if his life depended on it. Not to mention, he can manipulate them with sound bites, but he can't relate to them.
Well, I can't believe I'm going to actually defend Alan Jackson, but when you need some, when you need some, what do you call it? Royalty-free music. It's not a great selection there, Grant. You know?
He's now running for district attorney.
I took him at his word. Something like that is too important a commitment to be.
Yeah, that's the $1 million bail for a misdemeanor. But it was a misdemeanor for it was a flashing sign that people were saying were super dangerous. And the judge put out, obviously asked for a high bail, but he tricked a judge into giving him $1 million bail for a misdemeanor. So making it sound like he stole a pack of chewing gum. And then all this stuff is making him look like a degenerate gambler. This is obviously...
Didn't you see that line about FBI investigation? Like, yeah. This was 2014, like, Jackson knew exactly, like, this man is calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing this whole time. Like, when that popped up on the screen, LA DA under FBI investigation, like, I bet if we looked into that, it might not have even led to anything. And whether or not it did, the point is, like, Jackson knew even back then, possibility of someone being under FBI investigation, that gets people talking and automatically makes it seem like they've done something wrong because the conviction rate is like 99.7. He knew back then.
Mm-hmm. Be just a campaign ploy.
Hangover had clearly just come out, or The Hangover 2.
Oh, right. So this good is point. Like, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
But it's so,
right.
It's not even Hollywood. What it is there's this style of public relations that is very cookie cutter. It's kind of like baseball stadiums in the 1990s. They destroyed the jewel boxes and they paved over them and built parking lots and terrible cookie cutter stadiums that look the same whether you were in Pittsburgh or Atlanta or Milwaukee or wherever the hell you were. And that's what Alan Jackson has done to what was once a beautiful art and a sacred art of being in the public sphere. He's made it a profane cookie cutter sort of put your stamp on it, sell it to the next client art form. And I find that so disdainful because it's just insults my intelligence. And it's so profane and it disgraces personal autonomy. And it's just not it's not very difficult to figure out. At least make it a challenge, Alan. This was quite boring. And there's a lot at stake here too. And you did a very bad job.
Yeah. So what are you're going back to court tomorrow? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, I'll be there bright and early, sometime before 5 a.m. I get up at 3 a.m. to chase the news in South Lebanon and Yemen anyway. So, but yeah, I'll be up early, hanging out on the courthouse steps, eating various snacks, and then chasing the bagel place when it opens. And my days are all the same. I have no idea what the hell is going to happen once court starts, but until then, things are relatively routine. And then we have a nice social event and hang out on the court portico. And then the court officers are like, "Why have you all built this encampment here, you hooligans? Take this down." And then we go inside.
So what can we expect? Do you know who's on the witness list for tomorrow, or what we can expect for tomorrow?
Oh, well, definitely Lank. And there's something big is coming because this whole trial, and this is, I guess, what I'll end on. This whole trial clearly is culminating to something. And I've kind of touched on how every day has been designed by the prosecution to leave us with something. Literally today, David Unetti was extending a cross-examination at 3:35 p.m. the jury was falling asleep, and David Unetti was like, isn't the form number XYB742? And the reason why DY was doing this, I don't know if I knew this right away. I think I even tweeted it. DY was doing that because he knew if he ended that cross, Lally was going to put up a witness, and Lally had something ready to go that was going to be a bombshell. And Lally was going to end another day on a bombshell and just ruin DY and Alan Jackson's night. And so DY tactically was like asking these ridiculous questions on cross. It's not even like ridiculous in an insulting manner. They were just dilatory. And eventually Lally was like, objection. Because DY was just reading a report. Like, doesn't the first line say X? Doesn't the second line say Y? And Lally picked up on what DY was doing. He was like, objection. This is ridiculous. Okay, so my point is, there was going to be another bombshell today. We didn't get it. We'll probably get it tomorrow. It's a half day. We end around 12 or 1. However, what folks should realize is that every day is choreographed. I don't know what's going to happen every day, but every day is choreographed so that we are left with a bombshell. Some days we don't get them exactly when we expect because of the timing, like today with DY. But the reality is every single day is going to be a bombshell. And these are small bombshells. Everything you have heard through day 5 is minuscule. By the time we get to day 10, day 15, day 20, towards the end of the prosecution's case, we are building to things that are going to be so devastating that I think Karen Reed, this woman who I have never seen express actual tears, may actually walk out of the building crying because of how bad it's going to get. So I hope folks understand this is not going to get any better. This is not going to become any more of a debate. It's just going to become very devastating very quickly for everyone involved. And people should remember it's been this devastating for the O'Keefe family the whole time, and they've had to deal with years of this nonsense as they've just been trying to get the justice that people are now figuring out they were entitled to all along.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I've already seen. I think that this is hard. Obviously, this is the prosecution's case. Things can all turn around when it comes to the defense's turn. Lisa Cox, thank you very much for this super sticker. Grant Smith Ellis, where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can find me on Twitter at Grant Smith Ellis, and you'll find me because I'm a towel, and it's me because it will say, disabled and things like that in the profile. And my top tweet is about my cannabis reporting. You can find me on Instagram at Grant Smith Ellis, Facebook as well. I do a lot of regulatory coverage there. If you want to support my actual long form journalism, where I write like tens of thousands of words about like corruption in regulatory agencies, patreon.com/Grant Smith Ellis. If you want to help me get through this trial, because again, I cannot pay anyone to sit in line. I have to do this 12 hours a day and I make no money. You can send me money through Cash App at Grant Smith Ellis or through Buy Me a Coffee, which is buymeacoffee.com, I think it is, /Grant Smith Ellis. And either one will be helpful. The Cash App is more immediate. The Buy Me a Coffee, I think, comes every week. Either way, it'll go towards the gas I have to put in to get there, the food that I pay for, the coffees that I drink, and the Monster Energy that I had today, which is probably the only reason I was able to talk to Roberta for this long. So I'm glad I have it.
I appreciate that. If you're listening now, please hit the thumbs up. It's so important to share this episode, subscribe to the channel, support me on Patreon. I'm working on an episode. Hope to get it out this week. Funny episode, real fun episode. I'll be back, not tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow, but I may be live streaming tomorrow. I may just be live stream just for the fun of it on this channel for the half day. You might be able to see me there. Check in tomorrow at, what does it start at, 9 tomorrow or 10, Grant?
It'll be 9 tomorrow. I expect Karen will arrive between 8:20 and 8:40. But yeah, expect the session to start around 9:10 a.m. And then we will not go a minute past 1 p.m. I assure you it'll end at exactly 1 p.m. because everyone goes to lunch.
Sounds good. So I may be live streaming tomorrow. Check in just for fun because I'll be watching it anyway. Have a great night, everybody, and thanks so much, Grant. I really appreciated this.
Anytime, Roberta. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay. Have a great night, everybody.